right now, editing is like, okay, well, I have the order for 1,000, but I'm invoiced for 1,100. All right, I'm gonna need to reach out to the branch and make sure that these overs are okay. And then they can apply that invoice. In Epicor, what you receive in is quote unquote the gospel. So if you've received in 1,100 of that 1,000, then when the invoice comes to AP and they're matching up the receipts, they don't have to reach out to you because basically you received the 1,100 and that's what we're invoiced for. What it also eliminates is the whole need of having the supplier invoice before they can be billed with the cost complete. So when you receive these goods in, the cost is going to go to the project, and if you ship them out the next day and you provide whatever documentation is needed to verify that shipment, then that can be invoiced the following day. There's no need on corporate waiting on that supplier invoice. Now, with all of that being said, it's very important that when you issue your purchase order and you get confirmation back from your supplier, if there's a change in your price or something, that you go in and you make that change on your purchase order itself. Because you can make changes on your purchase order as far as quantities and price and that kind of thing, as long as you haven't received that material in. So if you issue a purchase order for $1 a piece and the supplier comes back and says, sorry, it's $1.01, you just go into your purchase order and approve it, make that change and approve it again. And that way, whenever the invoice does come into AP and you've received your material, everything's going to match up. It's not going to go to exceptions processing.
You said that has to be done before you receive it?
Before the material is received in. So
what happens if it's so would we not receive it in until we get the invoice, or what happens?
No, so hopefully your supplier will send you an acknowledgement saying that they've received your purchase order. If they receive an or you receive an acknowledgement and they've approved that price and everything, then you're fine. But if if later on when the invoice actually comes in and there's a different price, we have a way of handling it. Even after you've received in the materials, it goes to basically a purchase price variance on the project. But it's just kind of best practice if you can change the purchase order before the materials are received, so that everything will match. It's not the end of the world if you don't. Like I said, it'll hit the PPV on the project. But for inventory purposes and all of that kind of stuff, obviously, it's better to have it at the true value of the materials. So what we're going to do now is, let me make sure I've gone through. Okay. So what we're going to do now, because we've only touched on receiving and shipping, is we're going to receive in our purchase orders that we created with our homework. So we're going to put in our purchase order. One thing I do want you to also pay attention to, is in your project tracker, like for example, mine, I have, I go to my related and I go to my POs. I have one PO that has actually 2 lines to it. So if I was to receive line 1 first, line 1 release 1 first, then that's fine. That PO will remain open in the system until I receive line 2 release 1. So once a purchase order, just like a sales order, will stay open in the system until all of it is satisfied, until everything is either received or in a sales order, everything has been shipped. So, just again, make sure on your purchase orders, if you have one PO, but it has 2 different lines on it, you'll want to receive both lines. I'm going to pause before we actually get into receipt entry. This is a lot of information, I know, and some things, that are not kind of how we do things today, as far as, you're not going to keep your inventory in Excel anymore, or on ledgers, or whatever means of tracking inventory. Anything that is ultimately going to be shipped to a customer, or it's going to be used in some way to make something else, everything is going to have a purchase order, and everything will have to be received into the system. So you can't ship something to your customer if it's not received into the system. I know in my experience in Dallas, we had some lovely sales agents that would call up a supplier and place an order, and they'd use their name as the purchase order, and then the stuff would show up on the dock, and I would have no idea why it was there or what it would pertain to. In the new world, that stuff will just sit there until the process is started, and you actually have the purchase orders in order to receive that material against. Again, I'm 4 years removed. I hope they have better behavior these days, but I think I read your lips, Jen, and I think you said they don't, but I'm not sure.
Don't. And who's going to have that? Maybe Amy should get on those sales agents about their doing their homework portion.
Hey, no, don't start that. Let's not throw me under the bus.
Well, I will say that there are definitely, I know that a lot of the sales managers that have been having, conversations with regional managers and that kind of stuff, they're kind of learning about this at a higher level, but it is something that we will have conversations with at the branch level to let them know that, things will definitely be different. And there will be requirements, and there will be, standard processes that have to be followed. So, you can always just say, you're not going to get commissioned. And then that
That's
usually,
true.
That sometimes will change the mindset a little bit.
I'm sure once they realize, this system to track and keep everything, it's fine. It's just a matter of getting them to make the changes mentally like we are as well. The concept is kind of hard to grasp, doing the change when we've been doing it this way for 20 years.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the part.
Yeah. And it's, again, it's going to be a learned, you got a lot of people who, are habit people. And, it's hopefully most everyone has a good working relationship, with their sales agents. And, I think once we really lay it out and how the system works and what visibility they'll actually have and what visibility you have, and the benefits of all of it, hopefully that will outweigh the need to pick up the phone and call a supplier and, use their names as purchase orders. So,
I have a question.
you bet.
My biggest thing that I am struggling with is every window that I open from the start of this purchase order that we did with the homework, I cannot seem to figure out who the customer is, what's the part number is, what am I ordering. And the way to search it is, I have no idea what the PO number was, I didn't write it down.
So, and that's a good point. That's why I suggest almost always keeping your project tracker open. Because if you go to your related tab and you look at your orders, it's going to have your customer name on there and the part numbers. And you can, again, you can move columns around. If you want to, customer part number, you could put next to the system generated part number. So I can drag this over here. And obviously I dropped it too soon, but I can put this over here so that whenever you open up the screen, you're seeing things the way you want to see them, things that are of value to you. I will say that whenever you do something like that, though, to make sure that you go to tools and do save layouts so that it'll be there each time that you look at it. But in your project tracker, when you click on this related, it's going to have everything that's related to what you're doing. So it's going to have, your purchase orders once you've linked them.
So the biggest thing is to have two screens. That helps because I'm toggling back and forth and I can't see what you're doing. I can't see what I'm doing. I'm minimizing all back and forth, and it's just very inconvenient.
Yeah, I do know a lot of people who use two monitors. Full disclosure, I don't know how to do that. I've sat at Matt's desk back in Jersey one time and thought I was doing something on one side, and then I flung it over to the other, and it gave me anxiety. But you also
I never agree with it.
do
It's
what?
giving me anxiety too, but I knew it would. But I'm weaning myself off of paper, but not weaning myself off of Pro Gould paper is different than weaning myself off of Epicor paper. Which now I feel like, do I start over now with Epicor paper before I figure out how to go back and forth to try to find this information, because I'm not writing down the right stuff and I'm just getting lost.
Okay. Well, if you want, I can set up some time to work with you, independently, and you can, we can take the time for you to make the notes that would make sense to you. Like I said before, the procedures that we've sent you guys, you're welcome to make notes on those, or, any kind of changes that you want. You can simplify them a little bit and maybe take, just have one for purchasing, and, how you generate your suggestions, how you look at new PO suggestions, and how you link your project to your PO. That's all stuff that, it's whatever you're more comfortable with and how you learn. I will say also, we will have training videos. So I know a lot of you have gone back and watched these sessions when you're doing stuff, and that's helped. We will have, if you remember, Paula did a great job with a lot of the dashboards and that kind of stuff when we first went live with Epicor, and how to find, information and stuff. We'll be doing that for all of the business processes as well. So we're not quite ready to start those yet, just because we're waiting on some modifications to be complete and that kind of thing. But yeah, I know it's different, and especially for those of us who've been here 25 years or more or whatever. But I would just say that one, repetition of doing things, and to sometimes step away from it and come back to it. Because sometimes just to clear your head a little bit and come back, and then things sometimes make a little bit more sense. I can't tell you how many times I've had to do that. But if anybody wants, any additional help or whatever, we've got Paula, we've got Trisha, myself, Matt's on vacation, but, that's what we're here for. So we really do want you guys to be comfortable with this basic training and understanding the whys of what we're doing before we really move on and get into anything more complex.
I'm very fortunate that my partner Mandy is making cliff notes for the AARP side of Stephen Gould and Covington.
So I do have good. Cliff notes are good.
I'm good.
All right, so like I said, you know, and I've said this many times, but the project tracker is something that, like, when I come in here and I'm doing anything, it's the first thing I open, just because even if I'm starting from scratch and I'm doing my quote, once I win my quote, I can come over to Project Tracker, I can click this refresh button, and it's going to have my quote attached to it. And then when I create my sales order from my quote, again, I just click over here and click refresh. Oh, there's my sales order. So it's just something to, you know, it's the easiest for me. It's the easiest way to find what I need. All right. So in receipt entry, again, here, if you don't know your PO number, you can search on it, and you can search by your buyer. And I have a bunch of POs that are out here. I need to clean this up, but so I'm going to take this first PO here and say okay. And again, I see it over here in this window of my project. So say okay. And the pack slip, again, this is something you can make up, or if you have paperwork from a warehouse or, you know, from the supplier or whatever, you can put that pack slip in here. I will say that later on, that is a searchable field. So if you wanted to go back and look at something, the pack slip is a searchable field. When I put in a pack slip number and I hit tab, it's going to say record not found, add new. One other thing I want to say about these pop-ups, be sure you read them. Sometimes they're annoying, but sometimes they're actually valuable information. If you change a need by and ship by date on your header of your sales order, and a pop-up window will come up and it'll say, you've changed your need by and ship by. Would you like to copy this to all line releases? And if you say no, then it's going to wipe out the dates that you have on your sales order lines, which will result in you not getting any suggestions when you do purchasing because there's no date there. So just pay attention to these pop-up windows until you really get super familiar with how the system works. But so the record not found, add new, yes. And the arrival date is basically the date you're doing this. So if you want to change that, you can. So if something came in on Friday and you didn't get notified from the warehouse until Monday, you can backdate that till Friday. I don't know if there's any reason in doing that, but, you know, it's for you to do if you want to. Again, I mentioned this last week. I have no idea why the ship via is on a receipt, but you can put that in there if you want to. I don't. And now I need to receive my lines that are on my purchase order. So I've done this. I'm just going to hit save, and I'm going to do file, new receipt line. It brings over my PO number. I need to let the system know what materials have come in. So what line and release from that purchase order am I receiving right now? So if I click on this, I can search to see what I have on here. All right, so I have two lines that are both open. So I'm going to do line 1 right now. Line 1 and release 1. And our quantity, 1,500. I'm going to change this, and I'm going to put 1,600. And then I'm going to change this. So see, again, here's a pop-up that says receipt quantity is greater than the purchase quantity. If that was a typo and I said, okay, I can still go back and change it. It's not locked until you actually click this receipt button. If you notice also, my default warehouse, because I'm doing a receipt, my default warehouse is the receiving warehouse. We'll get into why we have all these different warehouses later on in training, but I'm going to change this just to my general warehouse. With every receipt, you have a warehouse and you also have to have a bin. So I'm going to search for a bin. And basically, and I'm just going to put in general. And then the receipt needs to be tied to a lot number. That lot number is used for the whole unit cost method. So this lot of material that I'm receiving in is going to tie back to this purchase order, which will also tie back to using the unit cost method when you start shipping stuff. So I'm going to say next lot, and it's going to ask me if I'm sure I want to create a new lot, and say yes. And I'm going to say that this line in this release of this purchase order is received. And I'm going to click save. So one other thing I want to bring up is we have, actually, let me make sure we have it before I say that we have it. This dashboard here, PO quantity difference. So I can look at everything under my buyer ID and click refresh. And this is going to show me anything where the PO release quantity and then the balance on it. So if you see here, this is the one I just did. This is my purchase order. My PO release quantity was 1,500, but I actually received 1,600. So it's a difference of 100. All of these that have no receipt quantity, obviously I haven't received those in yet. But this will show you if you issued your purchase order for one quantity and you received a different quantity, it's going to show you in this dashboard. This will be important to know in a little bit, but so it also shows you what POs you have that are still out there that you haven't received. So I could always, go in and look at any of these POs and wonder, well, why haven't I received this? And it'll give me, whatever date it's due or whatever on the purchase order itself. All right, so going back to my receipt entry. And remember, this is the purchase order that has 2 lines on it. So I'm going to receive the next line. Sure.
I have a question before you leave that screen.
Yep.
Under the location, and you put general, are we supposed to change that then to general? Because, or no, and then over on the bin side, so when you change, mine had receiving in it. For me to learn, I need to go along with it.
Okay.
Mine had receiving, and then under bin, it had receiving.
Right.
And when I change it to general and go back to bin, it has a whole list of numbers.
And it doesn't matter which one you choose. So what's going to happen?
We should change it to general, though, not receiving.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And the reason why, so I'll explain this just a little bit. When you guys are actually up and running with Epicor, you will have a receiving warehouse, you'll have a main or a general warehouse, you'll have a shipping warehouse, you'll have an inspection warehouse, you'll have a WIP warehouse. The way that Epicor works is every time that a part is moved, it records that transaction as a movement. And you notice we've got this PCID that we're skipping over right now because we're working on a modification for that. But that will assign a unique number to that material, and that's where you'll be able to put, you know, how many pallets and what the quantity per pallet is will be in that PCID part. But in order to assign a PCID, it has to come into the receiving warehouse, and then we'll assign PCIDs, and then we'll move it into wherever its home is going to be. So in general, you know, if you have a lot of different bins, it's because we know that you guys are going to want to track in a location where your materials are.
Thanks.
Sure. All right, so now I'm going to receive in my second line on my purchase order. So I'm doing new receipt line. And it brings in the same PO because you can only do one receipt per PO. And I'm going to, again, if I wanted to search on here, notice my first line says closed. So I know I can't receive against that. So I'm going to go to the next one and click OK. I'm going to leave this quantity as the same. Again, I'm going to change this just to general and put in my general bin. And I'm going to give this one another lot because there's a different value to this item that I'm receiving. I can click received, save, and now when I go to the summary, received all, and this PO is good. So you guys go ahead and receive your purchase orders. I'm going to go ahead and do my next one. So another thing is you can go straight from this, you just finished one, I can do here again, new receipt, and put in my next PO number. Put in my purchase order, create my pack slip. I need to add my line to it. If I want to search, I can search. I'm going to change my warehouse. I don't know why I'm talking to myself because you guys are trying to work.
Quick question, right?
Sure.
I got a little ahead of myself and clicked save, and I cleared my screen before I clicked the receive all button. Is there a way to pull it back up?
Absolutely. So remember when I said your pack slip is searchable?
Mm-hmm.
If you put in that PO number again, and then click on your pack slip gray button,
Okay.
And then, click search again.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the received all button should actually auto check if, when you're on your line and you click received and then click save. So when you're on the line detail here, you click received and then save, the received all will check on its own.
Yeah, when I pulled it back up, it actually was, so that's
Okay,
good.
cool.
Thanks.
Awesome, sure. So once you guys have done your receipts for the POs that are on your project, I just want you to pull up your project tracker again. Oh my word.
Our way to look at the receipt, the packing slip numbers, somehow I got messed up.
The packing slip number should be on the summary page.
Summary, okay. Why did it create? That's so weird. All right.
Is it there?
I don't know what it's doing. Oh, well, I was all good on the first. Somehow I messed up. I created my packing slip, first one. Well, then I went to do my other PO, and it created a new pack slip number for me.
It should.
I know, but I think I'm on the same receipt that I was working on before. All right, I'll check. I'll try to mess around here.